So the spiritual reading for this morning comes from a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, has been a peace advocate for many, many years. He was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King Jr. In Buddhism, our effort is to practice mindfulness in each moment, to know what is going on within and all around us. Most of the time we're lost in the past or carried away by future projects and concerns. When we are mindful, touching deeply the present moment, we can see and listen deeply. And the fruits are always understanding, acceptance, love, and the desire to relieve suffering and bring joy. When our beautiful child comes up to us and smiles, we are completely there for her. When you have mindfulness, you have love and understanding. You see more deeply, and you can heal the wounds in your own mind.
Yuan once asked his master, Hui Hai, "What is your practice?" Hui Hai replied, "When hungry, I eat. When tired, I sleep." "Doesn't everyone do this?" Yuan asked. "Yes, but not as I do. When they eat, they think of other things. When they lay down to sleep, they think of 1,000 things. That is how their practice differs from mine."
Would you pray? Holy One, may the words of my mouth be filled with love and compassion, with insight and grace, as we strive to calm the monkey minds within each of us. May we find this place to be filled with clear awareness. We let go of the distractions and strive to simply be. May all that comes from me and all that arises within each of us be filled with your wisdom and your light. Amen. I'm going to mess up Nora's stand here for a minute so I can see your two beautiful smiling faces over there. So Buddhism. Buddhism actually sort of emerged out of Hinduism in that the founder of Buddhism, the first Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, had been a Hindu. Born a rich kid, a prince, had every luxury he could ever want, was raised, educated, had a life that probably people only dream about. Got married, had a kid, and then he started to witness suffering in the world. And it struck him really hard. So hard that he decided he was going to leave everything that he knew and go out into the world and seek a way to get the suffering to stop. Buddhism is like Hinduism in that they believe in the circle of samsara, which is birth and death and rebirth. And part of that circle is birth and suffering and death and rebirth, that everyone suffers. None of us escapes without it in some way, shape, or form, and most likely in many ways, shapes, and forms. But Siddhartha wanted to find a way to stop that circle, and so he tried all kinds of ascetic practices and religious practices and spiritual practices, years and years of being on the road and traveling and trying to figure it out, until one day, sitting under a Bodhi tree, meditating, he found enlightenment. From that moment, from that humble beginning, Buddhism has grown over 2,600 years ago, right? To the 5th largest world religion. There are many similarities to Hinduism, but there are also many differences. I've given you a little cheat sheet, just like you got last week on Hinduism. This week you have your cheat sheet on Buddhism, to give you some of the differences and some of their practices and their philosophies / theology, however you want to look at that. But I'm not going to stand up here like a college professor and lecture on all of these things. What I want to do is talk to you about one piece of Buddhist spirituality that I think can speak to each and every one of us on our own spiritual paths. And if you disagree with me and don't like it, then just ignore what I have to say. But I try this in my life. I could be better at it, and so, as you know, I always preach to myself. So this is a reminder to me and an invitation to you. The core practice, the foundational practice for Buddhism is meditation. It's developing a deep concentration. It's calming the monkey mind that's been bitten by a scorpion, to finding a clear awareness, to coming to a place where one recognizes, as Buddhists would say, the illusions in life, the impermanent things in life, which are our bodies and our relationships and our stuff, our fears, our egos, our anger, all of those things aren't permanent. And so meditation is to get past all of those impermanent things to a deeper place where we remember that at the very core of our being, who we are is spiritually connected to anything and everything. That we are part of the oneness in the universe. It differs a little bit from Hinduism, whereas Hindus believe in an individual soul that at enlightenment merges back into the essence, the absolute reality that exists. In Buddhism, there is not so much an individual soul. It's that we are part of that oneness always. And when we reach enlightenment, we simply remember that that's what we are. So meditation is a huge piece of trying to get to that place of enlightenment. Personally, I am not a very disciplined person. And so I don't, you can laugh at me, it's okay, Dan. I've really tried to have a meditation practice. I took a meditation class, figuring that would get me going, right? I'd have to meditate every day for a half hour. And I did. I made myself do it 95% of the time. But I have a really hard time sticking with the meditation practice. Now maybe all y'all are much more disciplined and you'd all be better at it, good at it. I'm going to hope that there's one or two of you out there that is fairly undisciplined in that sense like I am. And talk about another aspect that has gained popularity recently, and I think it's at least secondary in importance, and that's mindfulness. You've all heard people talk about mindfulness. It's exactly what you did opening that little Hershey's Kiss. Being mindful in the moment of how it feels and smells and looks and tastes. Being mindful is recognizing our feelings in this very moment. It's recognizing the senses in our bodies in this very moment. It's about not getting caught up in whatever happened yesterday. It's not planning the rest of your day or worrying about what's going to happen 2 months from now. It's about being here. And when we can be in this present moment, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, it can develop in us a place of just this spaciousness and openness that can hold anything that we can experience. And we can grow in love and compassion. And I truly believe all of that. To be in that space all the time is probably impossible for us mere mortals. But those moments when we can cultivate that, the more moments we cultivate, the more grounded we are, the more clear we are, the more present we are to enjoy this amazing life that we've been given. So I think we all do this a little bit anyways. So consider a time when you are present, really present and aware of what you're doing, of how you're feeling. Maybe it's a time when time just flies because you get so caught up in what you're doing in the moment. Can you think of something? Gardening. Sure, Racine.
When I'm weaving a rug.
When you're weaving a rug. Yeah. What else?
Reading.
Reading. The interesting thing about reading and like watching TV, I struggle with those because I ask whether we're actually present in our bodies or whether we're caught up in a story. And while it does calm the mind and gets rid of the monkey mind, and we are concentrating, I get that. So I go back and forth as to whether we're paying attention to our feelings, whether we're clearing our mind, getting a clear awareness, and I go back and forth on the issue. So I'm just letting you know that that's where I'm going with those. But what else? Anything else?
Cooking.
Playing with a child, sure. If you're focusing your complete attention, or maybe when you were talking to the older woman yesterday, your whole attention was focused on her for that moment. Like, oh, Beth?
I just said cooking.
Cooking. Yep, can be. Mike?
This is different, but during COVID, I walked every day 10 miles, and there was nobody out there, and you could just focus on everything around you, the walk. It was so quiet. Now I know it was during a
Right. So as long as when you're walking, you're not worrying about the past or the future, and you're saying, "Oh, my feet hurt,"
right.
and
Which they did.
which they did. If you're present in that moment, oh, look at the beautiful flower, feel the warmth of the sun, feel the fresh breeze. Then yes, absolutely, biking, walking, any of those things can do that. Teresa?
I was going to say swimming.
Swimming, sure, to feel the water, to feel your muscles move, to be fully present to that, surely.
Just sitting quiet by the water.
Yep, sitting quietly and just letting the water, the power of the waves, the space.
Singing or playing a musical instrument.
Singing or playing a musical instrument can be a place of, if you're not paying attention, right, Nolan? If your whole practice is not, if your whole attention is not on the music and how you're doing it, you're somewhere else. I don't know. That's what we mess up. So you all have a sense. You've all had those moments. What do they feel like? You know what they are. What do they feel like? You feel complete. Refreshing. Light. Calm. Energized.
At peace.
At peace.
transcendent.
Transcendent. Absolutely. It's a broadening. I know you make kind of funny faces, but I don't think that's untrue. Yeah.
Time doesn't matter.
Right.
You're so in it that
Right. So in a space where time doesn't matter, you're just in the moment.
in the zone.
Yeah. Right. So what are the habits of this world that are resistant to having these moments? Rushing around.
Driving.
Joanne?
Multitasking.
Multitasking. Oh, the phone in your hand, Brian? Put that down. Rex? Facebook, social media.
Driving.
Driving to work, yeah. Sure, so all of those things that say you have to go faster, you have to know what's going on at every second, you have to get addicted to your phone, those, anything that says you have to be perfect. All of those things make us resistant to even thinking about what's going on right now because we're so worried about all of the other stuff. Being mindful can be a challenge. You know, when you're sitting by the lake and the sun's warm on you and you got the breeze, you know, that's maybe easier space. There are pleasant, easy spaces to be mindful in. And then there's life at its worst, when you'd really rather not be mindful. And yet, even in those places, mindfulness can open us up, can expand our consciousness in such a way that we're able to hold gently those things that are difficult. That we give a nod of awareness to those hard feelings, emotional and physical. And we hold them gently and lovingly, and it expands a space within us that can hold anything in the world. So, the frenetic pace, I'm going to go back to for a second. While it's it causes resistance or it makes it harder, it's an obstacle to being mindful, it's possible, but it's certainly much easier if we slow down to be mindful. And maybe the practice gets built up when we're moving a little slower so that when we're moving faster, we can still get it in. It's like, Beth, you said cooking. So if I'm in a hurry in cooking, I'm messier, I'm more likely to miss an ingredient, I'm more likely to skip a step and screw up. My daughter and I were in a hurry making cookies and, we missed the baking soda. So that's not good when you're making cookies. But when I can slow down, then it can be a much more enjoyable practice. And I can be present and be grateful for the food that I have to prepare, for the people I have to prepare it for, those sorts of things. In France, how many of you visited France? A whole lot of you. Okay, so you can tell me if this is true, because I spent hours going through there. But they say that the practice in France is to slow down when you eat. That their meals tend to take a long time. This is true. Like a meal at home, they say it can take an hour and a half, and a meal out with friends or a holiday can take 3 to 4 hours, because they're slowing down to enjoy. To taste the food, to savor the sensation, to the texture, to pay attention to the texture, to enjoy the conversation and the people that they're with. A whole different way of simply having a mindful experience, a full-blown experience. So Jerry Larkin, who is a Buddhist master, she is an author, talks about a time before she was very far on the Buddhist path, and she was volunteering at a Buddhist temple. And she went in and she asked what she could do. And I'm telling this story because I think sometimes we think we're more mindful than we really are. Okay? And it's the slowing down that helps us be more mindful. So the person she asked said, well, you can clean the bathrooms. Joy and happiness. So she went and she cleaned the bathrooms, and she came back and she said, I'm done, what can I do now? And he said, clean the bathrooms. And so she went, she looked at the bathrooms, and she recognized, well, okay, there was still a little hair in the corner over there, and there was, a glob of something on the edge of the sink. And so she cleaned the bathrooms again. And she went back and she found the guy, and she said, okay, I'm done. What can I do now? And he looked at her and he said, clean the bathrooms. At which point she said she was starting to think that this mild-mannered person had an evil, sadistic streak in them. But she went back, and this time she decided she was going to take a deep breath, and she was going to look things over, and she realized that the wall was kind of dirty, and there was a little bit of newspaper stuck in the mirror where she, cleaned them real quick the first time around, and there was still a glob of soap from the last time sitting on the sink, and so she said, she took a deep breath, she decided she would clean the bathrooms an inch at a time. And she was surprised at how dirty they still were. And when she was done, she went back, she told the person that she was leaving, and he walked with her to the bathrooms, and he looked them over, and he said, wonderful. And she said the teaching moment for her, the thing she learned was that slowing down and being mindful about what she was doing felt great. At the end of the day, it felt great. even cleaning the bathrooms. Jack Kornfield tells a story about a woman named Whitney. And Whitney had aging parents, as many of us in this community have. And she got a call from her parents. Her mom had broken her hip and had hip surgery. Her dad was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and things were pretty rough. She and her brother both lived far away. And she talked to her brother, who basically said, "You take care of it." So she took a month off of work, and she traveled to where her parents lived in Illinois. And she walked into the house, and the house was in shambles. She said her mother needed time to recover and to heal, and her father's Alzheimer's had gotten to a place where he really couldn't do anything for himself. And so they needed much more help. But they didn't have the money to pay for a full-time caregiver. And so she knew in her heart that they were going to have to move. Overwhelmed, she took herself for a walk up a hill that she always used to climb when she was a kid. And as she's walking, she's thinking about the situation. You know, this is her childhood home. She doesn't want to have to give up the childhood home, to leave that and all of the memories, and how hard it will be for her mother especially, to leave. And watching her parents decline was weighing on her, and she didn't want them to get worse, and she didn't want them to die, and she's weeping as she's crying, as she's walking. She gets to the top of the hill, and she sits down, and she starts to calm down as she looks out. It's just a vast expanse of prairie. And as she looks out at this vastness, she feels herself just sort of calming and relaxing and having a clearer head and realizing that, she's not the only person in the world who's dealing with this. And that, in fact, there must be all kinds of people who have to deal with aging parents and all that comes with it, because it's a part of the human journey. And in just those moments of being present and being calm and being mindful of her own feelings and what was going on, she sensed just an expansion of her understanding and acceptance, a grounding that she was able to take back with her and to deal with the situation with more courage, with more trust. And I think that's what mindfulness brings for us. It brings for us an ability to have more resilience, more hope, more strength, more joy, more peace, more clarity of what needs to be done. We can look at a situation, be in the situation, and approach it from a standpoint of understanding how to deal with it skillfully. So in the book that I read from today, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about a Catholic priest who went to one of his retreats. And at the end of the retreat, the priest came up to him and he said, this mindfulness stuff is great. He said, I've experienced how it brings joy and peace and happiness. He said, but how do I keep doing this when I get back to my church? And Thich Nhat Hanh said, well, does your church have a bell? And the priest said, yeah, it's got a bell. He said, well, then every time the bell rings, use it as a moment of mindfulness, a moment to breathe and to come back to your true home. And he explained that when he was a monk in a small village in Vietnam, the temple had a bell. And every time the big temple bell rang, everybody in the village stopped for just a couple moments, for a moment of mindfulness breathing, to return to themselves and return to the moment. So perhaps, the question becomes, how do we live this out, right? How do we carry this on in our daily lives? And so perhaps the question for each of us is, what's a trigger we can use to bring us back to ourselves, to our true home? Is it opening the refrigerator? Is it the next door neighbor's dog barking? Is it, Brian, if you're attached to your phone, is it a mindfulness bell? There are apps for mindfulness. I set one on my phone and it would ring every 2 hours, and I was always surprised that I was breathing really shallowly. And all of a sudden I'd be like, wow, okay, I'm back to me, right? What can each of us do that can be a trigger for that moment of mindfulness? Or are there rituals that we do each day that could be a ritual of mindfulness, whether it's brushing your teeth with attention, or taking a shower, or cooking breakfast, or having your cup of coffee in the morning, driving to work. What can be a practice that can center you, that can ground you, that can be a moment of expanded consciousness? Thich Nhat Hanh said that our true home is in the present. He said, and the miracle is not walking on water. The miracle is living on this beautiful green earth in the present moment. Amen.